Greetings, programs, and welcome to a new episode of the Awesome Friday podcast, the podcast where we review two new things every week. My name is Matthew, and joining me, as is usual, is Simon. Say hello, Simon,
Hello.
to all of our listeners.
Hello to every single one listener of our listeners.
Yeah.
And I hope you're doing well today. We actually have more than one listener, and that makes me smile a lot because we never... it's never really something you think about, but it's very, very nice. But I'm okay. As I was briefly telling you off air, we had a sleepover with one of our daughter's friends last night. So I was on a hotel shift making breakfast for 1 million people and then taking them to the park. So
By
let me
a
tell
million
you,
people, do you mean two small girls?
two small girls who had full breakfast and they're like, can we have a light snack? And their light snack was 2 bowls, one after the other, of dry Cheerios that they ate with their hands in a fist formation, like they are.
None of this is shocking to me.
They've just emerged from a famine, and the first thing they see is Cheerios, and they're sort of animalistic, fisting this into their mouths. And just after I fed them eggs and bacon and toast and jam and apples and everything. Apparently Cheerios is where it's at, and the only way to eat them is dry with a fist.
That's accurate. I don't see why you're ever surprised by any of this. I just, my understanding of children, not having any of my own, but my understanding of children is that they're effectively just hobbits. So you feed them breakfast, and then they're like, well, that was lovely. But what about second breakfast?
You're going to discover this later.
11Z's afternoon tea, I just assume they're eating all the time to fuel the ridiculous amounts of growth in their bodies.
My son in particular now eats more than I do. Like, his portion is bigger than mine, and you're feeding us later. You're gonna see this firsthand as he you put a plate in front of him and he does that thing you do where he kind of blinks and then the universe kind of shifts and all the food is gone. And he's like, yeah, that was good food. I assume there's more. Mildly friendly.
Yeah,
I do enjoy
accurate.
To our listeners at home, if you want an idea of how quickly Matt eats, we went to see a show once and we were hungry afterwards, so we went to McDonald's and Matt bought 2 burgers and I bought 1 burger, and we were walking over the Georgia Viaduct and I looked away briefly and he started with 2 burgers and then he had half a burger remaining, like in the time it took for me to look slightly to the left and back again. I don't know how you do it.
It's not out of the ordinary. I'm a large person.
I reckon you got some lizard like jaw dislocation thing going on where you can just push the food in.
I am somewhere between 6'4" and 6'5". I guess I'm 1.94 meters in Canadian.
It's rather large.
And I'm quite tall, and I'm not going to disclose my weight, but I will say that it is in excess of 100 kilograms. It's like I am a large person. So, eating is just a thing that I do. It's when I make dinner for my wife and I, which I do several times a week, because we trade back and forth. Whenever I do the portions, though, it's very much a 3/5, 2/5 in my favor type situation. If I'm being stingy.
That's fair though.
I mean, it is. I'm a large person, and my wife is kind of a small person. So,
and she doesn't have a massive appetite as well, either, does she?
Oh no, she does.
Okay.
Anyway,
but compared to,
it's all relative, man. It's all relative. Yeah.
I just remembered on that. I know we talk about this every time we feed you, but the first time we fed you, we were trying to made, was it a lasagna or something? And we made extra. My wife and I we tried to save money by making more dinner and then having it for our lunches the next day. So we did this with our lasagna. And we did this huge portion. And I was like, that's nice. Can I have a little bit more? Like, of course you can, friend. Help yourself. The whole of the rest of all of the lasagna just gone.
Oh yeah, I ate your lunches. I remember
but
that.
That's a good. There's cultures where that's a massive compliment, and luckily this is one of them. So, I always makes me happy, that memory.
Yeah.
So what are you cooking for us tonight? The people want to know now.
I honestly, I'm not cooking. I don't actually know the answer to that question. I'm on cleanup duty before we have guests, and Dan is cooking, and
okay.
it's I'm pretty sure it's a dish you've had before, but I don't know exactly what it is. So.
She made us. We were covering the Oscars once, and she just turned up with something Mexican. It was like an enchilada or something.
Oh yeah,
do you remember that?
She makes
so good, so
I mean,
good.
I don't specifically remember that, but like I enjoy that your memories of my wife's cooking are like the best thing I've had in that particular calendar year, and I'm like, that was a Wednesday. That was a Wednesday, I think.
And also, I like how stubborn she is when it comes to spice levels, because I'm pretty sure I said no, don't make mine spicy, and she's like, no, you're gonna have it. You're gonna have it as it comes, which is spicy, and she was right, and it was fantastic.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So yeah.
Good. My wife
so
is an excellent cook and a connoisseur of sauces. So eating here is a privilege. So
she is one of these people that sneaks hot sauce in her handbag to restaurants, which I do enjoy.
I mean, she's the person. She's the person that does that.
So how are you? How's everything? What else have you been watching apart from the two things that we're going to talk about today? Is there anything else? I know we're both enjoying Andor. And,
we are both enjoying Andor because it is excellent. I've finally been getting Dan into watching the What We Do in the Shadows TV show. So I've seen all of it, but she's well into season two now, which is excellent. It means she just went past the Jackie Daytona episode.
Oh,
yeah, just a regular human man.
In there, like clearly they just said, let's just let Matt Berry just do whatever he wants for an episode. Just let him go, let him work.
I actually think, as much as that is a great Matt Berry episode of television, I think it's actually a really good Mark Hamill episode of television as well.
Yeah.
The way he sidles up to the bar and says, 1 human alcohol beer, please. It's pretty iconic.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's good stuff. I've been enjoying Andor and Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy. My kids really like Star Trek. My son loves Star Trek way more than Star Wars, so he's very happy with Prodigy, Star Trek Prodigy, which if you're listening at home, you see this on Crave, you think, oh, I'm not watching that. It's a Star Trek kids show. It is, but it's also absolutely fucking brilliant show. It's a really good, exciting, episodical Star Trek. It's really good.
Yeah, any adult nerds who look at that and say that's a kids show, but then also confess to having watched, Star Wars Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars Resistance, like you're the target audience, my friends. So just watch that show.
And I can't say, but Michael Giacchino had a very good day when he composed the music for that show. And it is every time that show comes on, I just whack it right up and put the soundbar on and tell everyone to be quiet, because it's a tremendous. In fact, all the Star Trek shows have really good themes, like specific themes with that kind of.
Sorry, what do you do when the music comes on?
What did I say? Whack it up? Oh, do you not say that here?
I mean, we say something like that, and it means something totally different.
I turn the volume as loud as I can go without bothering the neighbors. I whack it up. I whack the volume up. Oh yeah. Oh, that doesn't mean I'm.
You crank it. You crank the volume.
I don't masturbate furiously in front of Star Trek Lower. But all the themes, like the Lower Decks theme, is fantastic as well. I really like how you can tell it's Star Trek, but it does like different things. All the different themes have that familiarity. It's very good.
Well, it's sort of the beauty of current Star Trek is that there's kind of something for everyone, because each individual show is very identifiably Star Trek, but also very unique and interesting with their own on the sort of core values of Star Trek, which is one of the things we complained about a lot with Star Wars, that it's all trying so hard to be Star Wars. It's what makes Andor such a breath of fresh air.
Oh my god!
So you could just make that any story, a revolution in any culture time period. It would still be a good story. It just happens to be set in Star Wars, and I love it. I love it a lot. I love it a lot. I found an episode with Andy Serkis kind of heartbreaking, and
amazing. Oh my god, amazing! Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole mini arc in the middle was just like watching theatre. The last episode was like watching an incredible piece of theatre. It was amazing. The
Yeah,
writing is
it's the
amazing.
third quarter of the first season of the show. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I certainly can.
And we're only getting 2 seasons, so we're yeah.
Yeah, I know. Oh well. Hopefully the reaction to it is giving them a bit more of an idea of where Star Wars should go in the future, which is prestige and good. Like, don't worry about everything else. Don't be so focused on fitting it into everything else. It's just brilliant. It's making such huge broad strokes, and it's doing it so confidently. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's the best Star Wars thing since The Last Jedi, which was the best Star Wars thing since the originals. And I stand by that assessment.
Yes. So, what are we talking about today?
Oh, nice segue. I dig it.
Thank you.
I guess we have hit the 10-minute mark, though. Banter. Hilarious. Anyway, so we have a 1-2 punch of Florence Pugh this week. We're going to talk about one movie that was the talk of the town and the talk of social media. What feels like a year ago, but was probably like a month ago.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about a new movie from her, starring her, that comes out. It's in a limited theatrical run and will be out on Netflix next week. But let's start with the controversial choice, which is Don't Worry, Darling, the weird 50s set horror thriller thing directed by a woman whose name has left my brain, Olivia Wilde, and starring Florence Pugh and Harry Styles and Chris Pine and Wilde herself, and Gemma Chan and a number of other people, Nick Kroll, and it's a weird movie. Simon's giving me the look that says, "Nah, it's just shit." I disagree that it's entirely shit, but
shit. Yeah.
The premise is that Florence Pugh is a happy suburban housewife in a 50s-esque neighborhood, married to Harry Styles, who works at a mysterious place for Chris Pine, and something is wrong. Something is wrong. There's something rotten in Denmark. And you spend, depending on your media literacy, you will spend either the whole movie trying to figure out what that is, or approximately 4 minutes trying to figure out what that is.
This could be the first movie you ever watch in your life, and within 4 minutes you're like, "Oh, okay, I know exactly what's about to happen."
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think you could easily figure out sort of what's going on without getting how it's going on till later in the movie, but like you definitely know what's going on pretty early. It's not a subtle film. It is gorgeous to look at, the production design, the sets, even the cinematography, and I would argue some of the directorial choices are quite good. I think Florence Pugh is amazing. I think Chris Pine is wildly charismatic and interesting, and I think that Harry Styles is in this movie. And and Kiki Lane is in this movie, and she has basically no part. And as I understand it, most of her role hit the cutting room floor, which is a shame because she's really compelling in the few moments she does have.
I wonder what else she could have done. Like, what else could she have done with that character, though, that would have been even remotely interesting? Because she's there. It's so one-dimensional. Her character is there to do one thing specifically, to drive one other person, and there's no nuance to it at all. So I'm not going to seek it out, but I wonder if there's her deleted scenes are going to appear on a Blu-ray or something. I'd be really, really interested to see, because she's really publicly unhappy at how much her character's been cut, and I'm very curious about that, because I wonder if the movie made some different overall choices at one point, and then just decided to get a bit more unsubtle. I would be very interested to see her scenes, to try and work out what it might have been, because at this point, watching this movie, there's no other thing for her character to do but the short thing she did in this film.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if perhaps a lot of the sort of unsubtle environmental stuff that's going on that sort of twigs you that there's something sinister happening here was, I don't know if more subtle would be the right way to put it, but maybe if more of it was her, at least in the first like go round. You know what I mean?
There's definitely one part of that's involved with her and her son. There's one very significant moment that is never ever explained in any way, and that's you can. I would not be surprised if that's a pretty fundamental part of her sub story.
Yeah, it's hard to speak about without spoiling it, but I mean, this movie's been out for a while now. I don't know if spoilers are a real thing, but if you haven't seen this movie, like, I would encourage you to maybe not seek it out. But this is definitely the kind of movie that, like, if it's there and you're like, oh, this looks interesting, like, you could definitely do worse. It's interesting because to me, it's not a great movie, but it's also not a bad movie, and I feel like all the behind the scenes talk and shenanigans really overshadowed whatever we were going to talk about with this film. You know what I mean? Like, if there hadn't been such drama, I think this movie would have been come and gone and been like next year we'd have been like, remember, Don't Worry, Darling? It was a bit disappointing compared to the setup we were promised, but then we would
Yeah.
just stop talking about it, right? Like, instead, there's all this, unless you've lived under a rock, you're aware that there's all, they hired Shia LaBeouf to play, I think, Harry Styles' part, and then they fired him, or maybe he quit, or maybe he quit because he was fired, and then Florence Pugh refused to do press because Olivia Wilde started sleeping with Harry Styles, and Jason Sudeikis, her former partner, is good friends with Florence Pugh's former partner, Zach, and just like it is just a total soap opera, total soap opera. And I wonder, like I think that would have overwhelmed the movie, the discourse about the movie, no matter what. But I feel like having now watched this movie, everyone who gave it a really bad review, just was like, really, like it's fine, it's totally fine. Use it as a vehicle to discover other better movies in the same vein.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think disappointing is the best word here because Florence Pugh is a fantastic actress and she's fantastic in this. And it's more impressive, when she is trying to act opposite Harry Styles, who, and make no bones about this, is absolutely fucking dreadful in this film as an actor. I haven't seen My Policeman, so I don't know his other work. He's only briefly in Dunkirk. It's not very memorable, but in this, he's carrying a lot in this. And to go from casting Shia LaBeouf and then whatever reason that stopped, and then going from him to Harry Styles is a really your cat falling off. It's a really interesting and bad casting decision that I can't get my head around unless you think about it from the point of view of Olivia Wilde is now bringing her new boyfriend in, and the Florence Pugh, the very very active rumor about this is that Florence Pugh walked in on Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles having, as Clinton might say, sexual relations of that kind, and then had to deal with this for the whole rest of the filming. And so it's even more impressive that she can hold character at all. First of all, opposite Harry Styles. Second of all, opposite Olivia Wilde, who plays her friend in this. But it's full of very strange choices because it does look really good. I think Olivia Wilde is a good film director. I really thought Booksmart was amazing, which perhaps makes this even more disappointing as a follow-up to Booksmart, which was a brilliant and intelligent film, and this just isn't at all. It's when you watch it, you instantly know that from the setting and from what's going on, okay, it's going to be this movie, and then it starts off aping one movie and then it turns into aping another one, and perhaps you're expecting it to be another film, and that's the only kind of surprise it holds. It's like, oh, it's not doing this one, it's doing that one. But it was the choice of which movie it then becomes, that's also a bad choice. It doesn't work for me at all. And there's just so much in this that could have had, like you said, there's potential here for something really interesting, and it looks really good, and the direction is fine, but Harry Styles is just awful. Chris Pine and Florence Pugh are both fantastic with what they've got, but it's what they do have is very subtle, and there's tons of open, like lots and lots of loose ends. Gemma Chan's arc has a very abrupt, sudden ending that is not foreshadowed or followed through at all.
I mean, I would argue that her arc has a very sudden beginning, middle, and end in the same scene. But
yes, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So I'd be curious if this was a longer movie. What state was this in when Kiki Lane's scenes were in there? Like, did it have a more subtle exploration of what's going on here? Because what's left over is just it's so unfulfilling on a basic level. But as you said off air, any time spent with Florence Pugh is not time wasted. She is fantastic in this. She's really fantastic. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to spoil the movie, but I don't think it's unfair or even really a spoiler at this point to say like it's a version of the Stepford Wives. And the question is, how is it a version of the like what is the mechanism of the Stepford Wives setup? And I think when you get there, you'll be like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Whatever. Like it's not very interesting.
No.
It's just, because every version of a story like this now is like, it's a Stepford Wives, and what other horror movie are we going to cross it with? Like, what horrible thing are we doing to these women? But the thing that gets me is that, like, Chris Pine's character is meant to be this, like, charismatic leader of the company, and in the press, they very directly call him out as like the sort of like quote Jordan Peterson type, which he very much is. Fragile, sexist piece of crap with a small amount of power or a large amount of power over a small group of miserable, sad men. And like I feel like that probably could have been explored just a little bit more, or in a little bit more depth as well. Like this movie misses a lot of opportunities for depth. Would be a good way to put it, I think.
It misses all of them.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I think might have been the first state of this film before they cut it down, and they clearly did, because what's her name, Kiki
Lane,
was clearly shocked at what came out on a similar. It reminded me of when the Star Wars cast reacted to The Rise of Skywalker, how much had been changed and cut out of that, like that genuine shock that you think you're acting this arc and then something completely else, something changes in the edit room. So who knows what pressure was on to do that, or whose idea that was. But it just turns out to be something that Stepford Wives, and you think, oh, well, it's probably going to end up being this movie, and it should have done that instead of the other movie it tried to be. Actually doesn't make any sense at all when you think too much about it. And that's a shame. Chris Pine, it's worth mentioning as well, is really cold and scary in this, and I think he's one of these really talented actors who can do both ends of that spectrum. Jesus, if you compare him to, say, Wonder Woman,
that's the most British thing you've said on this show in a long time.
What, spectrum or schedule?
Schedule. Chris Pine can act at any level on the schedule of emotions.
His schedule of emotion is full of appointments. You can find him at any time. And compare his Star Treks and his Wonder Womans to this or anything else where he is devious and cold. And he can do that really, really well. And he is, again, fantastic in this. And I'm sure he had a terrible time making this too. It's very funny to me that in the Cannes and all the publicity that Florence Pugh actually turned up to, it was her and Chris Pine and Gemma Chan and Kiki Lane are hanging out together, and
Nick Kroll as well.
Yeah, none of them went near Olivia Wilde or Harry Styles.
There's a great, I think it's on TikTok, that I think Nick Kroll put up. It's Nick Kroll and I think Gemma Chan in a limo rolling into Cannes and just like shooting footage of the crowds outside, and Nick Kroll being like, "You're not here for us, people. Like, we know it. You know it." It's pretty great. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's on Crave. Watch it if you subscribe to Crave, as I do. You get to watch it for quote unquote free.
For
Um,
no extra
uh,
charge, I believe is
and
the.
and that 50s look is always good. I mean, if it's shot well, it just looks fantastic, and that's why so many films like ape it. And
And just to
so
be
you
just
can
to
do
stay on
worse.
brand, it is not just it's not just the aesthetic 50s aesthetic. It's bright and colorful and like interesting looking. It's not dull and bland like so many other
Hmm.
movies are. It doesn't look like the color filter they chose was concrete, as with
Yes.
other larger franchises, Marvel, and their usual color grade. So it's a really gorgeous movie. It's a really gorgeous movie, and you could really do worse than to watch it. And it's on Crave in Canada now. I'm sure I don't know what it's on in the States, but it's going to make the rounds on streaming services. It's Warner Brothers, so it'll probably end up on HBO Max at some point.
There's a
If it's
great
not
drinking
there,
game. A great
oh,
drinking game is take a drink whenever Harry Styles uses a different accent, and you'll be too drunk to make the end of this movie. Because there's one there's one great line in this where it's established that chosen nationality British, and you've got a theory that's they had to put that in as an ADR because he could not maintain his strong American accent that turns into like Northern English that goes midway between. I had 4 different accents in this movie. In Actually, that was when I texted you, so it was about halfway through. That was before the big rug pull at the end. So enjoy that. Like he's as a singer performer, my wife and kids really like him. Great, he can wow the crowds and he knows what to do. But he is not a good actor on any level.
so I disagree because like he's legitimately great in Dunkirk, and I think
Oh, come
everyone's
on.
almost every once in a while.
I
And
wouldn't
you're
say
right
he's
though,
great
like
in Dunkirk. Come on.
I thought he was great in Dunkirk is just great, start to finish. But anyway,
Hmm.
I did have a theory as to why he's got such a bad British accent for most of the movie, but I can't really explain it without spoiling the end of the movie. But
Hmm.
basically, I think it's a chosen accent because he's actually a dipshit piece of shit, and he's doing what he thinks is cool, and he's not good at it. But the movie
Hmm.
itself, like that would be a great theory if the movie itself bore
I
that
think
out
you,
in any meaningful way.
I think you're doing the legwork for Olivia
Like
Wilde here. I have to
I'm
say,
doing a lot of the legwork here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's a whole thing. How many
So
stars would you give this movie? I'm gonna go ahead. Swami says 2. You're giving it 2, right?
Florence Pugh gets a 2. Um, that's a star each for Florence and Chris Pine, doing their best with what they've got. And
Hmm,
again, she is one of the most interesting actors working at the moment. So 2 stars.
hmm.
How about you? You're a
I should.
3, aren't you?
I'll give it 3. One for Pew, one for Pine, and one for the aesthetics. And because I think it's fine. I don't think it's quite bad enough to be bad. It's just not good enough to be anything other than fine, and that's fine. It's
Hmm.
fine. That's like the death knell for most movies for me. Actually, is that you know
Yeah.
they're fine. I never really need to see or talk about them ever again.
Hmm.
Yeah, good.
It's a shame.
Well,
Uh,
Don't Worry, Darling is out on streaming services now, and do with that information what you will.
Go and watch Booksmart instead. Like Booksmart
Yeah,
is a much better film and is really rewatchable. So go and watch that instead.
yeah, that's a good point. Booksmart's a much better movie,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
would make a really good double feature with Edge of 17, which you should totally also watch, which is
Oh, I
unrelated. I've
have
just been
still. I know. I've
thinking
been
about that
wanting to watch
movie.
that for ages. Oh.
I've been thinking about it because we're also watching The White Lotus, and Haley Lou Richardson is in The White Lotus, and she's in Age of
Hmm.
17,
Hmm. I like her
and
a lot.
I like her a lot too. Anyway,
She's in that film. She's in that film you like that I haven't seen still because I don't want to cry forever. Columbus, Colum,
Columbus, yeah,
not Columbo.
that's a different
Um,
movie. It's a different series.
I think you
Uh,
should watch that at one point.
you really should. I completely agree. It's a great, great. That's uh, my favorite film of the year that it came out, which was
Mhm.
20. I want to
Mm,
say
yes. that year.
2016. I want to say 2016. I'm not really.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if I can quickly look that up because Letterboxd is good that way. 2017. Yeah,
Yes.
best movie of 2017 in my opinion, and that was a strong year for film, as they all
Mm-hmm.
are.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, that's very much like "Don't Worry, Darling."
Yes.
Let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and Simon, why don't you give us the rundown on our next film, which is called The
The
Wonder? The Wonder,
Wonder.
playing in limited release right now in cinemas, and will be on Netflix on the 16th of November, which is a couple of days from when you're hopefully listening to this. Simon, why don't you give us the rundown?
So Florence Pugh is an English nurse who has been called to a small town in Ireland in the 1800s, shortly after a bout of troubles and after a severe history of famine in that country. And the surprise, surprise, the Irish hate the English, so that's what she's dealing with already. And the reason she's been called to this small town is that there is a girl called Anna who reportedly has not eaten anything for 4 months at that time. And she claims to be surviving by receiving manna from heaven. So a collection of local council men, made up of a priest and a doctor and so on, have asked two people to take a watch over the girl. In shifts, and they're not allowed to talk to each other. So you have Florence Pugh's English nurse, and then you have a nun, and so they're having a medical voice and they're having a religious voice, and they are trying to ascertain the truth of this story and how she's surviving. And as it unfolds, again, I'm trying to tiptoe around spoilers. As it unfolds through their observations, Florence Pugh starts to get to the actual truth of what's happening. And the story is basically about the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we want to believe. And once we decide to believe a story, even the truth can't stop us. And Florence Pugh is basically up against religious belief in trying to save the life of this little girl who's slowly like emaciating into death. And it's hard. I don't really want to say any more. There's lots that comes out about her. She plays a character called Elizabeth Wright, or Lib, and there's lots that comes out about her past, and she's not necessarily a shining star either. And I adored this movie. I absolutely loved it. But there's elements in this film that, uh, based on my background in theatre and in film, and I love it as you do. I love it when those things mix, and this movie makes it very clear that it would like to mix these elements, and I loved it. I adored it. There's so much good to talk about this film. Like, what's your feelings about it?
Uh, I liked it a lot. I liked it. I thought it was good. I think it has some pretty severe pacing issues. It's very long. It's very slow, and there are long periods of time where very little happens. And sometimes I connect with that kind of thing, and other times I don't. And this is one of the latter. I I found myself wanting for something to happen at many instances uh, in this movie during many scenes, and I don't think it's a bad movie by any stretch. I think it's a really good movie. I definitely didn't like it as much as you did, but Florence Pugh is incredible in it. The young woman who plays Anna is also incredible in it. Her name is Kyla Lord Cassidy. Not really
I
sure
don't
how
know
to
what that
pronounce.
accent on the I does in Irish.
Yeah,
It's probably
nor
Kyler, I think.
yeah, I'm not sure. I also think that the woman Elaine Cassidy, who plays Anna's mother, who is also her mother in real life, is also
Oh, no
really good.
way.
Yeah, they're mother and
That's a
daughter in
real.
real life.
Oh, no way. Huh.
Yeah, I think that it has a great ensemble of supporting people. I think that Toby Jones and Kieran Hines and Dermot Crowley are always sort of good value when they show up, and they show up in films like this all the time. um,
Mhm.
Period set where they need an older person with an accent to be in a position of dubious authority. Um,
Mhm.
I actually think Tom Burke is wonderful in this movie. Usually, when I
Mhm.
see Tom Burke in a movie, I'm like, "Oh, that guy's a slimeball. That guy's going to be a total piece of shit." And usually, I'm right. And in
Mhm.
this one, he plays a really nice guy, and it's actually an
Yeah.
interesting against type performance in the opposite way that you would usually expect.
Mhm.
Um, and he's
Totally.
really good as this sort of like him and Florence Pugh both are really good as these sort of
Yeah.
emotionally damaged people for various separate reasons, and
Mm.
their journey together in the film I think is really good.
Mhm.
But it's really slow. It's really slow.
I am
It's
so interested to
so
say
fucking
that
slow.
because for me it flew by. Like my eyes were absolutely glued to the screen at all times, and it didn't feel at all long for me, and that really surprises me because usually I'm the one tapping my feet if there's slow pacing, and every like I think it helps that for me, all I could see was that every framing and lighting decision turned this into like a painting. Every single frame was like this painting of that time. And I just loved looking at it. And I loved the slow realization of what's going on and the all the very difficult decisions that Florence Pugh was making with very subtle acting choices as well. And I loved the interplay between her character and Tom Burke's. It's written brilliantly as an interplay and an interchange. And there's one particular scene that's basically a long walking tracking shot where they're talking back and forth, and it's fantastic. And they're both so great at acting authentically without it feeling like they're going over the top. It's just very, very very affecting, I thought. And the ending, I was really worried about the ending
Hmm.
because uh, as they were leading to it, I was very worried that it would come off as too saccharine or if it wouldn't fit in. And I just felt like the ending was handled perfectly. And then we can't really talk about something in this film, can we?
I
But the
mean,
way,
we could go as far as to say that it has probably the most interesting bookends of any film we've seen this year, for sure.
it's,
The way it's set up and the way it's
yeah.
set up to be a story about how we feel about stories is super interesting and super effective. I think every time it comes up through the film.
I think we
Um,
can probably talk about it because it's literally the first time that tells you this is happening is literally the first shot of the film. In the first like seconds, it
yeah,
sets
I mean
out
the
what it's
opening
trying to
shot
do.
the opening shot of the film is of a soundstage. Like it's that and it pans over to a set that Florence Pugh is sitting on. Like it's a very
Mm,
interesting setup, and I did actually appreciate. Um, I did appreciate that, like from that point on, like for the rest of the whole movie, basically, I was, you could basically see the camera off, see the crew or feel the crew behind the
mm,
camera, and I felt that was
mhm.
really interesting. Um,
And there's a couple of moments because you are greeted as audience by a voiceover who you find out who it is later, but the there are a couple of moments in this film where actors look through the camera directly at you, and it catches you completely off guard. And it's only done a few times; it's not overdone, but when it does happen, it is absolutely what's the right word? Chilling, but in a good way. Like it's absolutely shocking to be addressed directly when you're usually there as a passive audience. It was really effective for me.
yeah, to your point that it wasn't overdone, I would actually argue that it might even have been a little bit underdone, which I think if there was even slightly more of it, it might have been a more engaging experience for me. It might have
Mm-hmm.
negated some of the pacing issues. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm saying it's a good movie. You should definitely watch it. But yeah, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely didn't like it as much as you did. But I
Mm-hmm.
did like it. Like we've already said in this episode, watching Florence Pugh is never time wasted. Not entirely, anyway.
She is just, I think, one of these incredible performers who can show so much variety and so much authenticity. And what I didn't realize until I was researching stuff for the podcast that this was the same writer as Lady Macbeth, and
Yeah,
I haven't seen that film, and I
she's
really, really need to
so.
watch that.
I mean, she's
Yeah.
kind of always good. I distinctly remember having mild whiplash because I think the first two things that I saw Florence Pugh in was Lady Macbeth,
Hmm.
but I didn't see Lady Macbeth until I had already seen The Commuter, in which she plays like this punk pickpocket person on a commuter train in New York. It's sort of it's
The Liam
right
Neeson
above-
movie.
yeah, she's in that Liam Neeson movie. Yeah, lots of honestly, lots of people are in quote that Liam Neeson movie.
Hmm.
Like the time that in Lupita Nyong'o shows up in Nonstop. Like, there's lots of people in those movies. It's pretty great.
I thought you were going to mention the wrestling one where she's the female WWF wrestler, like Fighting in My Family, or whatever it was
Fighting
called.
with My Family is an
Fighting with My
excellent
Family.
film, like a
Oh, is
wonderful
it?
crowd pleasing film. Yes,
Oh, good.
you should definitely. It's definitely like a giant advertisement for the WWE, but it's like
Uh-huh.
it's a real crowd pleaser. Like
Mm.
it's a wonderful movie. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Florence Pugh. She's I mean, between like 2019, she did Fighting with My Family and Midsummer and Little Women all in the same year, or all came out in
Oh
the
my
same
god.
year. And I'm pretty sure that was the year I said that she was my favorite performer of the year, like which makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I have a painting of her of the last frame of Midsummer right over my shoulder,
yep,
and I think
I
that
see it
was
every
the
time we podcast.
I think that was actually the first movie I'd seen her in, I think. And what a way to start. If you haven't seen Midsummer, and I've only seen it once, and it's one of my favorite recent movies, and I'm not sure I'd ever watch it again. It is an experience that you should watch, but good luck. Like,
Yeah.
strap in. Um, so the director
Um,
of this, I don't know. Have you watched anything else by Sebastien Lelio? Leo, maybe? I don't know where he's from. Maybe I'm saying his name wrong. Because
uh,
the direction of this film was so good. Like the
he's
framing and the lighting was
he's
incredible.
he's Chilean. Sebastian Lelio, I think.
Leo, yeah, Leo.
So he's Chilean. He's Chilean anyway, and the answer is yes. He directed a movie called um, Una Mujer Fantástico, or A Fantastic Woman, in 2017, which I believe won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film that year. And it is about a trans woman uh, basically existing in the wake of the passing of her lover, and it is 1,000% wonderful. You should definitely anyone who
Wow.
hasn't seen A Fantastic Woman should definitely seek out and watch A Fantastic Woman. It is an amazing film. So yeah, she also did a film, or he also did a film called Disobedience, which I have not seen, but everyone I know who's seen it says that it is uh, beautiful and wonderful, and has
Mhm.
Rachel McAdams and Rachel Weisz in it. Can't be all bad, can it?
Wow. Nope. Can't be any bad.
No, no. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know which way we can really talk about this movie though. Like, I think we both really liked it, right? Like, how many stars are you giving to Das Wanda?
It's a 5-star movie for me.
Oh wow, wow, that's way
Yeah,
ahead of me.
but I mean, it's the narrative framing of it. It just stayed with me so much. For a movie to get 5 stars from me, it has to really affect me and stay with me. And I'm I am like in love with the way stories are told in any form. I just love how stories are told, and this is a movie about how we think about stories being told with like theatricality. And then there's the last frames of this movie I don't fully understand, but absolutely like piercing. And then you've got a stand-up performance from Florence Pugh and Tom Burke, and then you've got the religious aspect that I feel very strongly about, and an ending that I think worked, and then the direction and the framing, like that. I was so glad it got to the end and didn't screw up the ending for me. And so by the end of that, it really affected me. So it was wonderful. How about you?
3, just 3 for me. If we were to grant half stars, it might be 3.5, but we don't, so it's 3.
Fair enough.
It's a really good 3, but it's just a 3. But that's a positive review, people. Like, just
yeah, you should watch it.
You should definitely watch it. There's
definitely watch it.
And it's a great. Whenever anyone says that Netflix doesn't make any good movies, you can just be like, this movie is right here. It's right here. Netflix makes lots of good movies. They just make a shit ton of movies, and it's actually, as it turns out, really hard to make a really good movie. So, yeah. They also, they're making movies for literally every demographic. They're not all bad. They just aren't all to everyone's taste. So, anyway,
it's weird, isn't it?
I could go on about this for ages.
Some Netflix movies look so cheap, like so bad, and so like strung together. And and then you've got other ones like this. And there's another one we watched recently that was exceptional, where you don't see any of that cheapness. And I think it's you're right. It's just any project that they want, prestige projects, but they also want their stunt movies, right? They want a face doing like a stunts for an hour and a half, making their own like cheap Jason Bourne, and
I think
they're just throwing everything at the wall.
I think the thing that we forget about Netflix is that everyone wants Netflix to be HBO, and HBO has a reputation for making really high quality movies and television series, but Netflix is also in competition with like the reality channel and Disney Plus and every other service and studio out there, and they are competing on all of those levels. And I think it's a worthwhile thing for most people, and I try to do this with myself all the time, just to realize that like this isn't I don't like this, but maybe it's just not for me. Like lots of people do love that kind of stuff. Lots of people love the sort of schlocky British lurid mystery type stuff they've been putting out too. I don't particularly like it, but lots of people love that stuff. And it's fine to let them love that stuff. It's totally cool. I'm glad they found their niche.
What a niche. It's very important when you have a British a couple of people solving crimes that you make a pun that's related to their last names, which is then the title of the show. That's an integral part of that genre. So that happens too.
Yeah, the best example of which by far is A Touch of Cloth. But anyway.
God.
Anyway.
Yes.
Well, that's, I think, all we have for the show this week. For those of you who are wondering, no, I have no idea when we're going to get to see Black Panther, but hopefully soon.
Do you want to see Black Panther?
Of course I want to see Black Panther, yes. Ryan Coogler has not made a bad movie in his career. He gets a free pass for life based on, his run up to this point.
That's fair.
And for better or for worse, I still I'm actually really enjoying this phase of Marvel where they're trying new things and trying to do more than just the same thing over and over again. So, and I think, Chadwick Boseman died, and I think it's a really interesting and good, potentially really good choice that they chose to make the movie without his character rather than just recasting it. And I want to see how they did that. But it's November. We're heading into big movie release time. We're not going to get to see everything in time for the end of the year, but I do want to see Black Panther. So, yeah,
good. I do recommend, if you want to, there's a new show on Netflix called Oni, O-N-I, which is a stop frame animation. It's a 4-part limited series, and they're only 45 minutes each. That is an absolutely adorable take on Japanese mythology of kami, good spirits, fighting Oni, bad spirits. And it's really beautiful. It looks again like a kid's thing, but it is made with the kind of deft deft hand that you might see in a who made Kubo and the two strings, that stop frame animation.
That's Leica.
Leica. So it feels like a Leica production. It is really, really good. So I recommend that if you've got extra time, as I'm sure you do.
As everyone does, for sure. Yes. Free time. What a novelty.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, thank you for listening.
Yeah, let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you. It seems like every week there are a few more of you, and we appreciate all of you, just all of you. We're so glad you're here. We love you all. If you have liked what you've heard, please feel free or compelled even to smash that subscribe button, hit that like button, give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. We are on basically all of them. And we do also have a Patreon and a Ko-fi. And if you'd like to support us a little more directly, you can do that. All of these things are linked in the show notes. We can be found on the social media. Normally, the main place we can be found is Twitter. So as long as Twitter exists, you can find me at SmatthewAF, and you can find Simon at Temporary Pen, and you can find us at Awesome Friday CA. But if you end up at the website, which again is awesomefriday.ca, you can find links to where the other places that we are. Because who knows, Twitter might be, it's going through a phase, we'll say. It's because I don't want to get into all of it. But
yeah,
it's a thing. It's a thing that's happening.
It will all be worth it, though, to watch that fuckwit lose $44 billion and be a laughing stock like worldwide. It might just be worth giving up Twitter for.
Maybe, as long as he takes down some more of them with him. But anyway, we record this here in Vancouver on the unceded lands of the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations. One more time, thank you so much for listening and for joining us on this Awesome Friday.
Bye.